Buy to let is dead, is what people keep on saying. But is it dead? Traditional vanilla buy to let investing, put a deposit down, buy a property, is getting more and more difficult. Average base rate was over the last 50 years. I'm going to drum roll myself for this one. 9% get rid of Section 21, and that means the end of no-fault evictions. I have seen people that have gone from £10,000 a month net to £10,000 a year. Buy to let is dead, is what people keep on saying. But is it dead? Let's break down what the challenges are in the buy to let market, the real challenges. I'm not going to dress it up that everything's great, because there are challenges. And let's look at how we can still win big by doing the right thing. First, you got to identify the challenges, then you got to work out how you can overcome it. Now, first and foremost, I often say that the challenges in the property market tend to boil down to regulation, taxation, and legislation. And they seem to be where a lot of the difficulty is coming, especially for the landlords who've been in for a long time, who are probably getting it worse than some of the newer people with newer strategies and different setups. So first and foremost, let's face it, traditional vanilla buy-to-let investing, put a deposit down, buy a property, is getting more and more difficult because the barrier to entry is getting higher and higher and higher. The property market continues to grow in terms of the actual value of properties, which means it's more and more expensive to actually get in and start investing in properties. Stamp duty has gone up, the taxes are higher. Again, more and more upfront cash required for, and I say this with intention, vanilla buy-to-let investing strategies. What I mean is strategies where you have to go and find that money. There are, of course, other strategies where you use other people's money, where you do other things more creatively, and you might be able to remove those barriers. So I'm going to identify problems. We'll talk about how we can solve some of those problems as well. But that is a real problem if you're starting out and you live in the South and you want to buy some property, but the cheapest house around you is £600,000. Where are you going to get a 25% deposit, the stamp duty, and so on? You're going to be in the hole for a couple £100,000, and then after tax, you're not even going to be making a killing anymore, especially if you get that structure wrong. So number one, barrier to entry is getting higher. That's a reality. So you need to know more than ever what you're doing and how to do it well. Number two, the mortgage rates are high. The mortgage rates are high. Everyone's saying the mortgage rates are high. The truth is the mortgage rates are higher than they were not so long ago. But if you go back historically, and I'm the kind of exciting guy that does this on a wild Friday night, I went onto the Bank of England website, downloaded the historical base rates over the last 50 years, worked out the average, and can you guess what the average base rate was over the last 50 years? I'm going to drum roll myself for this one. 9% is what the average base rate was over the last 50 years. So people right now at around 4.5% are running around saying that the sky is falling. Not quite the case. But yes, after 2008, the base rate did go substantially lower than it had ever been before in the history of time. And I'm going to throw a little bit of reality out on you guys. Some of you got a little bit too comfortable with it in that low position. You just sort of assumed it was going to go on like that forever. You're going to keep getting your buy-to-let mortgages for, all right, fine, I did it a little bit myself. You're going to keep getting your buy-to-let mortgages for 2% and your home buyers on 1.5%. But then it went back up a bit and you felt the pain. And so, yes, of course, expenses going up is never nice, but I just want to put a bit of perspective and zoom out a bit. In my opinion, they're higher than they were a few years ago, but to say that they are high would really depend on how wide you're opening up that frame. Historically speaking, they're half of what they averagely were. For anyone who's old enough, you'll remember at one point, base rate going up to something like 17 or 18%. But of course, I'm not old enough to remember anything like that, so we'll just move on. But yes, banks' mortgage rates are higher. That means that affordability and stress testing is a little bit more difficult. So if I'm going to go and get a buy-to-let property, what I have to do is pass something called stress testing or pass something called the interest coverage rate. So what that means is I will buy a property, and let's say that property rents out for £1,250 a month. they will only provide me a mortgage up until a certain point. And so usually if you're buying in a limited company, for example, the lenders will stress test you at 1.25. So that means if the rent is going to be $1,250 a month, the highest mortgage that I can have is £1,000 a month, and that will be based on their current rate. Of course, that means then that sometimes people won't get the full loan to value on a standard buy to let unless the rent is particularly high in comparison to the property value or the mortgage value. I hope that makes sense. If it didn't, rewind that. It tends to make sense after the third time you watch it. And don't forget to like and subscribe along that process, and then you get to watch even more of it. So lending is a little bit trickier in standard buy to let. Remember, I'm using some words intentionally here, in standard buy to let. But what if you went and diversified your strategy a little bit? Because you've got commercial property where, generally speaking, yields tend to be higher. So that could be a good option. And of course, there's other benefits like tax benefits and more hands off and longer leases and so on and so forth. Then you've got HMO properties, which never, in my experience, and remember, I quite literally wrote the book on HMOs, which never, ever don't pass affordability testing. And then you've got serviced accommodation properties where you need to know what you're doing, but if you know what you're doing, you can do it incredibly well and again make nice income still. So vanilla traditional buy-to-let stuff might be struggling a little bit in some of these fronts, but there are solutions, and this is why it's about educating yourself, taking time to watch videos like these, invest in your education, get yourself a coach, get yourself a mentor, someone that can steer you onto the right path. Section 21 is another challenge. And well, let's broaden out. The Renters' Rights Bill 2025 is another challenge impending. And a lot of landlords are getting, I don't know the technical term, let's just call it the fuckums with this particular piece of paper. And some of it's about what they think it means and maybe not entirely what it means. And it's not quite there yet. I know it's nearly there. So some people are worrying about what that's going to mean. For example, you get rid of Section 21 and that means the end of no-fault evictions. And a lot of landlords are running around again saying, that's it, the market, it's ruined, we can't operate anymore. Now, I'm not taking away from that. Of course, it's inconvenient, but I would say it's not much more than inconvenient. There are still Section 8s where you can serve people who are at fault or where there is a reason that you need to reclaim your property. And there's also discussion at the moment, at the time that I'm filming this video, about potentially allowing Section 21 for smaller landlords with 5 properties or less so that they don't end up in financial difficulty or difficult circumstances. So, you know, let's not jump off the ship just yet, but regulations will always change in every industry. It's part and parcel of it. Some of it's there to protect the tenants, and that's absolutely great. Some of it's there to win the votes, let's face it, but we've got to adjust to the terrain. There's 2 types of people. There's people that sit there and moan about what's happening and what they can't change, and there's people that just change with it and get ahead and work out what the best thing to do is. My advice would be, you guessed it, the second type of person. I know you are anyway, that's why you're watching this video. Next up, you've got taxation. Of course, Section 24 was introduced over recent years, and that's been a big sting for a lot of older landlords who were buying property in their personal name. Now, for context, in the English Private Landlord Survey 2021, 95% of landlords in England own property in their personal name. So that's a hell of a lot of people that were getting stung. Moving forward now, 60% of investment properties are being bought in limited companies, which allows people to circumvent that Section 24 obligation. If you don't already know, I've got plenty of other videos floating around on this on different channels, but Section 24 in short means that if you own an investment property in your personal name, you can no longer offset the mortgage as an expense. And this, given that the mortgage is often the highest expense for any property investor, is for some landlords detrimental. And when I say detrimental, I mean, I have seen people that have gone from £10,000 a month net to £10,000 a year. And I do not exaggerate, they're pretty much the numbers. And that's because you're now paying, for some people that are in their personal name, especially if they're higher rate or additional rate taxpayers, you are now paying tax on what we call phantom profit. It's profit that you never actually made because you did have an expense that you're not allowed to offset anymore. So another reason to move forward in your limited company. And again, if you're starting out, that's not a problem. It's a problem potentially if you're already in your personal name. There are solutions, but that's beyond the scope of this video, I'm afraid. But that's some of the reasons that there are challenges in the market. What do you do in that scenario? Well, that one's simple. You just buy in a limited company. You don't have that problem solved. Of course, if you have that problem, like I said, another video. So can you still succeed given all the challenges? And the short answer is yes. I am still very heavily invested in property, and that's for a number of reasons. Number one, you can't beat simple economics. There is a lack of supply and an increase in demand, which is only going to push prices one way. But what this means is you just need to be more intelligent with how you structure, how you buy, knowing your stuff, and also diversifying your strategies, making sure you're investing in the right area and making sure you're buying things at the right price. If there's anything you want to add to that, is there anything that you think I've missed or anything you want to see me make a video on, then chuck it in the comments. I look forward to seeing you in there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to see more of this good stuff. And you're welcome.